Welcome to Equity Happens, Strategies of Successful Investors. This unique program features excerpts from a day-long workshop and will cover many of the important concepts and mindsets successful investors are using to profitably invest in real estate. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, you'll discover key distinctions that can position you for success. Your host for the program is professional investor and talk show host Robert Helms. Robert is a highly successful landlord, investor, and developer. He teaches real estate appraisal and practices at the college level and serves on the board of directors for several companies. Co-founder of the Advisor Financial Alliance, a real estate investor development program, Robert mentors thousands of investors through seminars, mentoring clubs, and field trips. He's the co-author of the book Equity Happens, Building Lifelong Wealth with Real Estate, and the host of the Real Estate Guys radio program. Now, here's Robert to show you why real estate is a great investment vehicle. Lots of people say they want to own more real estate, and you know what they're doing this morning? They're still sleeping. You guys got up early, you got here, you made it on time because we're videoing today, and that already says a bunch about you. Guess what happens when we do a free seminar, and there are a couple things we do a year that are free. We get a whole bunch of people that sign up and they say, I'm going to be there, you bet, I'll see you there, I'll be at the seminar. And then the seminar comes and goes and they weren't there. As Mr. Rohn says, Jim Rohn says, well, the birds got them. Right? We don't know why that is. As soon as we put a price tag on the seminar and you had to write a check or use your credit card, you become a lot more likely to be here. And guess what? Today, almost everybody's shown up. Now, are a few people going to be late? Well, yeah, that always happens. If you people are going to be late because life happens, but a lot of stuff happens as you learn today. But I'd like to congratulate you for being here, and I have a question for you. Here's the question. How many of you came today because you want to learn more about real estate? Oh, look at all the hands. That is awesome. Now, here's a better question. How many of you came today because you want to own more real estate? Do you see the difference there? A lot of people want to learn about real estate, but guess what? Education is not enough. It's not enough, as I talked about earlier, just to learn. Education's important, right? You got to learn. You got to know something about it. My friend Todd Barnhart wrote a book called The 5 Rituals of Wealth. And in that book, Todd says there are no successful financial illiterates. Meaning that people get good in the money game, understand the game they're in. They understand finance. If you're going to get good at the real estate investment game or the real estate investment business, you need to have an understanding about it. So education is truly important, but education is not enough. We have this syndrome called paralysis of analysis, right? We get these people that come to our seminars, and we love these people. We call them groupies. And what they do is they show up to everything. They show up to our classes at the college. They show up to our seminars. They listen to our radio show every week. They know the formulas. They have calculators. They've learned. They've studied. What aren't they doing? Buying anything. And if you don't ever buy anything, how much are you going to profit from real estate? None. And you know what I love? I love all these no money down guys, right? No money down. There's no money down. First of all, can you buy real estate no money down? No. No, you can't. You can't buy real estate no money down. Well, okay, there are some instances where you can get 100% financing, you still have closing costs and all those kind of things, but it's very rare, and the competition for those deals is very high. So it's hard to get a really good no money down deal. Plus, because you aren't putting any money into the deal, the cash flow isn't very good, and many times those are the properties that end up what we call upside down, where there's more payment going out than coming in, boo hiss, and because of that situation, what happens is people lose the properties. Is that what you want to do, lose a property? No. So why is it that all these late night TV gurus will speak to no money down? Because guess what a lot of people have? No money down. But they got $299 on their credit card, don't they? So I'm not trying to dissuade you, but if you have absolutely no money, no job, no credit, guess what you have also? No future, right? So it does take something. Now, it's possible to get started with just a little money and the desire. And you know what? Which is more important? Desire and attitude are everything. Absolutely. We have a saying at the Advisor Financial Alliance, which is our group of companies that help people create wealth through real estate, and that is education for effective action. Education is important, but what's more important? action, and not just any action, not random action, but effective action. It's important that you learn what you need to learn so you can take the right steps. But the problem is people want to wait until they know enough before they do anything. Now, I don't want you to just take action right away. Like, great, we had someone come in our office in one of our consultations. This is great. We do these consultations with people, and most of what we do, of course, we teach in groups. But at some point, we need to sit down with you and decide where it is that you're going. And we sat down with this couple, and they said, well, we're ready to go. In fact, we want a good deal, and we'll get one. If you can get us a good deal today, I will write a check. Who's looking for a good deal? Who's looking for a good deal? You guys all want good deals, right? That kind of goes without saying. Well, we had to kind of slow them down a little bit, say, whoa, back the horse up. Listen, you can't just write a check until you understand what real estate's trying to do for you, and that's a pretty important concept. All right, here's another question for you. Are you a consumer or are you an investor? And do you know the difference? See, most people that I see start in real estate investing are consumers who are suffering from an investorial seizure. They think they're investors, but the problem is they act like consumers. So what's the difference between a consumer and an investor? Well, here's one of the basic things. First of all, a consumer saves their money. They save, they hold on to what they have, and they don't want to let go of it. My hard-earned money. They put it in the mattress, they put it in the piggy bank, they save it, and they're very concerned about losing their money. An investor, on the other hand, invests their money. They don't save it and hoard it. They put it out there into the world so it can do some work. And if you put it out there in the world so it can do some work, it will come back, hopefully with friends. And then it's a bigger pile of money, right? Now, when people come through our consultation, they have different goals and different ideas and so forth. But everybody has a different perspective. Later on this afternoon, I'm going to talk about your personal investment philosophy. And what you want real estate to accomplish for you is probably very different from what the person next to you wants, even if that person is married to you or related to you, right? Sometimes we have to talk about those things. It's amazing how many husbands and wives come through the consultation process and they think they're on the same page, and so we start asking some of these questions. And we find out that they're not really on the same page, that it takes a little talking through to get that, right? And I've got that, I'm not married, but just a little word of advice from watching a lot of couples come through consultation. Life is short, do it her way. All right, so consumers think everything costs too much money. Do you know how much it costs to park at the airport? It's amazing how much they can charge for food and soft drinks. And here's my favorite, bottled water at the airport. Bottles of water at the airport are like $3.50, right? That's a lot of money for water. But when someone says something's expensive, that's expensive. Here's what I want you to always say, either in your mind or out loud, either depending on the situation. When someone says that's expensive, or you find yourself saying, that's expensive, I want you to say this. Compared to what? Bottled water at $3.50 is expensive compared to dying of thirst, right? So I'm staying at a hotel in New York City and I want to get my soup pressed, and I go downstairs to talk to the concierge about getting my soup pressed. They say, Mr. Helms would be happy to handle that for you. It'll be $22.50. And I went, $22.50? I don't want to buy another suit. I just want to have this one clean. I go, do you know that my dry cleaner charges $7? And they said, yes, Mr. Helms. And how much would it cost for you to get there? Today you're going to hear from one of the guys that is on our real estate show quite a bit, and also is our attorney, Jeff Lehrman. He's going to talk about how to form entities. And Russ Gray, who you meet today, and Charlie Kraftler and I went to see Jeff Lehrman at a seminar he was giving, and it was 10 minutes before it was time for him to start, and we pulled into the parking garage next door to the hotel, and Russ had driven that day, and he used to have this big old Suburban, right, this big old fancy car, because we like to carry around a lot of stuff, right, and he pulls into the thing, and the guy wants $35 to park the car for an hour and a half. And we're like, $35? And all of a sudden, we all break into consumer mindset, right? Well, I know, we'll go around the street, we'll see if we can find a parking space, or maybe we can find a cheaper garage. And I'm going, you guys, the seminar starts in 10 minutes. Which is more important, us saving $5 or $10 in parking, or us being there before Jeff's seminar starts, getting a chance to say hello, meeting some of the people, and being relaxed in our seats when it starts? So $35 was expensive, but compared to what? Consumers focus on the price. And what consumers do with their money, by the way, is they buy depreciating liabilities, things that go down in value over time, like big screen TVs and jet skis and those kind of things that seem fun but add no value to your life. What do investors spend their money on? assets, appreciating assets. We hope things to go up in value. So it's a difference. Now, if you get involved with our Foundations program, which is how you get in our mentoring clubs, you'll get to understand very clearly the difference between consumer and investor mentality. But I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So let's talk about real estate. We're kind of positive about real estate. I don't know where you're at. Some of you already own income property. In fact, if you already own a property other than the house you live in, raise your hand. Look at all the people that are already profiting from real estate. Give them a hand. That's great. Now, how many of you own the home you live in but no other property? All right, you're building the American dream, and that's a great way. In the Bay Area here, where you guys are at, what happens? Properties go up quite a bit. We see people come to the consultation. Guess where the majority of their net worth and wealth is? In their house. And they think it's what we call hard-earned equity. What is equity? I'll give you the definition a little bit, but equity is the difference between what the property is worth and what you owe on it. So it's the part that is yours, right? If you're like, I got my hard-earned equity. In fact, we did a flyer once for a seminar saying, come put your hard-earned equity to work. How hard did you work to earn your equity? You lived in the house. That's all you did. You lived in the house, and the house would have been valued. And in the Bay Area, that happens, right? Not everywhere. Houses don't always go up in value, do they? Okay, but here's what real estate can provide. Real estate can provide long-term profit, right? Mark Twain said, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Time is your friend. In fact, time will heal almost any wounds when it comes to real estate. If you've made a mistake, if something didn't turn out right, there's a good chance that if you wait long enough, it'll take care of itself. And it's a great long-term investment. My dad, we call him the godfather of real estate. He's forgotten more about real estate than most of us will know. You'll get to meet Bob later on today. But Bob has lots of properties. He has this one property I like to talk about. It's in downtown San Jose. And Bob's reached the point in his life where he can have a property like this. This property is a 104-year-old Victorian. Now, I like Victorians. I think they're kind of neat. What's the problem with Victorians? Maintenance, a little expensive to maintain. But you know what? If you're Bob, you can afford it. So you have a nice property. And he's got this property, and every month it has positive cash flow of about $4,000. Meaning after he pays the mortgages and the insurance and the expenses and the taxes and all that stuff, he has $4,000 left at the end of the month. So every month, $4,000, $4,000, $4,000, $4,000. My sister and I and my dad go to Hawaii, and Dad is Mr. $100 bill. Right? He's like paying for all kinds of dinners and stuff. We're like, dude, what's with the cash? He's like, the rent. He's got all this money coming in. So my question to you is, how many of those properties would you like to have? 5? 10? Would you be happy with 20? 100, someone says? Here's my favorite answer. All of them. Right? Because at a certain point, you want to have property that is generating cash, whether you're doing anything about it or not. So there are long-term profits to be made in real estate. That's a great story. Now, is that the best way to optimize that property of Bob's? Probably not. Russ Gray is going to talk about optimization later on, and I'm going to give you an example of another one of Bob's properties that maybe isn't such a happy story. You'll think it's a happy story when I first tell it, but when I dissect it a little bit, you'll see where it can go with that. But the whole concept behind the buy and hold strategy is that over time, rents go up, you pay down the loan, and the property becomes more valuable. Is that a valid strategy in real estate? Absolutely. Here's the problem with that. It's slow and boring. And many of you don't want to be bored, right? So instead, we look at short-term profits. Can real estate generate short-term profits? Sure, lots of ways. So what we do in our Foundations program and our mentoring clubs is we do case studies of properties. So wouldn't it be interesting to see what someone paid for a property, look at the pictures of what it looked like before, then look at what they spent to put into the property and pictures of it during construction, and then once it's done, what they sold it for. Would that be good information? Yeah, you get to see. Now, we have some people who do those kinds of projects, and they'll share the information with the group in mentoring club. It's one of the most powerful things we do is get like-minded investors together. But you can make short-term profits in real estate. Now, what else can you do? You can hedge against inflation because automatically real estate goes up kind of with the economy as rents go up and everything else. So it's good protection. See, inflation is going to work. The question is it going to work for you or against you? As values go up and as the dollar becomes weaker and so forth, as it costs more and more money, $3.50 to buy a bottle of water, the question is, are you a victim of inflation or are you a beneficiary of inflation? Which would you rather be? I think you'd want to benefit from it. We'll show you how to do that. Okay, also, there's some tax advantages. You know there's some distinct tax advantages. Today we have Dan Kennedy, who's a CPA, who's going to talk about some of the tax techniques and advantages for investment real estate that don't apply to your residence, but do to investment property you have. And then Michael Yes, who's an attorney and a specialist in 1031 exchanges, is going to show you what I think is the second best tax tool there is in real estate, and that's the power of the 1031 exchange. If you don't know what that is yet, well, you're in the right place. You're going to learn all about it today. But there are some distinct tax advantages to investing in real estate. Also, a great thing about real estate is it can provide an ongoing asset. When you buy income property, you buy two things. Guess what those two things are? Income and property. That's what you buy, income and property. And a stream of income that continues and hopefully gets larger doesn't necessarily change the underlying asset. So you can have a property for years, right, that provides $4,000 a month positive cash flow, and then you can leave it to your kids. Or not. Right? You get to decide, but it's an asset that will go on for future generations. Let's talk about owning your own home. I think that owning your own home is the American dream, right? And when you own your own home, there's a lot of reasons to own your own home other than the money. One of the reasons to own your own home is you get to decide when to move and what colors to paint the walls. You get to decide how big your pet is and how many pets you have. No one tells you when to move or what to do or any of that kind of stuff. You're the one who gets to decide. That's a great reason. And you can raise your kids there and all that kind of stuff. And owning a home is awesome. In fact, it's a lot better than renting. But here's what we know. There will always be people that have to rent. Is that true? Eventually, I hope they become homeowners, but in the meantime, guess what they do? Pay my mortgages. I got over 200 of them. And every night they go to bed in one of my units, and they wake up in the morning, and they go to work, and they earn a paycheck, and they come back, and they pay some of it to me, and I don't have to manage them or supervise them or watch what they do or anything. It's really a cool deal. Now, Brian Tracy says most of life's problems do come with hair on top. So you've got to think about the whole aspect of landlording. And we have a whole seminar called Landlord Boot Camp, which is designed to show you the ins and outs of what it takes to be a landlord. Because if you're going to own income property, you need to understand rental law. Oh yes, especially those of you in California. Because California is a very tenant-friendly state. Some of the other states we're in are very landlord-friendly states. Now that's interesting too. How many of you right now would not consider an investment outside of the state of California? There's a few hands, right? And that's a cover. It's okay. It's perfectly okay. Charlie Crackler, who you met earlier, Charlie's dad has a 20-minute rule in his personal investment philosophy. Charlie's dad, Joe, is a very successful investor, and he won't invest in property more than 20 minutes from his house. Well, guess what? Because he lives in Los Altos Hills, there's a lot of nice property 20 minutes from his house. But what's the problem for most of us trying to buy property 20 minutes from Charlie's dad's house? It's expensive, right? So you may want to look a little further than that. Some of the examples we use, for instance, we'll say a $200,000 property, and instantly you people in the Bay Area go, well, where can you buy for $200,000? What is that, a mobile home? Right? But in some areas of the country, that's like a really, really nice house. We're going to show you some case studies today from some other areas, and you're going to see. But if you're not comfortable going to another area, then don't. 2 years ago, I did not personally own a single property outside of the state of California. Today, without selling hardly any of my California property, I own far more property outside of the state of California than in, because my philosophy is this: live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. Live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. Is owning better than renting? I think owning is always better than renting, and so we want to encourage people in home ownership. Most of the wealth in America is either made or held in real estate. If you went out tomorrow and you made a killing in the stock market overnight, how many of you would invest some of that money at least in investment real estate? A lot of hands. Now, if tomorrow you went out and via investment real estate you made a big chunk of money, how many of you would go out and buy stocks? Not a lot of hands, but the stock market's coming back, isn't it? We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so the question that we get a lot of times at the seminars is, well, I don't own a house yet. Let's see the people in the room, we haven't done this one yet, who don't own any real estate. You don't own any real estate. Go ahead, raise your hands, be okay. Now, you people have the advantage. You have the biggest advantage because you don't have any bad habits yet. Seriously, people that are, we get people that are, I've owned property for 20 years, and they think that they know it all because of that. Let me talk about your mind for a moment. Your mind can only be in one of two states. Number one, your mind can be in judgment. What is all this stuff? What are these fancy, fast-talking guys trying to tell me? Right? That's judgment. Or your mind can be in curiosity. It can be open. And the mind is like a parachute. It only works well when it's open. So if you're curious, well, I wonder if I could make that work. We've seen successful investors who have done very well in the past do extremely well in the future by changing their thinking a little bit. Right? Albert Einstein said that a problem cannot be solved at the same level of thinking that created it. And so the way that we get to the next step or the next level in any area of business or investment is to think a little bit differently. One of the best ways to think differently is to get around people who think differently. And then finally, tenants are our clients who want to remember that all the time. In Landlord Boot Camp, we talk about treating clients well because they are clients. They aren't your pains, they're your gains, right? Clients tenants are the people that make money for you because they're paying your mortgages, and we like that. All right, so Let's take a look at what's in the news. I always like to see what's going on and, in the economy, and it's always fun to see that. So let's take a look for a minute at what's going on in the news. I kind of prepared some of the articles that I've been reading lately, and I got to tell you, a lot of people in the office have put some of these things on my desk because I like to do this. Here's one that came out a little while ago. This is a big article in the paper. Many of you saw it. It says that most young Americans are not putting away enough for college, right? They aren't able to put away enough money for college or to be able to buy a house. Anybody relate to that? Here in the Bay Area especially, it's so expensive to live. One of the problems in buying a property is saving up the down payment. Would you agree? Right? You buy a $500,000 house, which here where you guys live is 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,400 square feet, run down, 35 years old on 5,500 square feet. That's $500,000. Do you realize how crazy that is? Right? We go to other places in the country, and they just can't believe the prices that people pay here. But those kind of properties. So it's hard to save. If you have to save 10% down, $50,000 is tough to come up with. Well, you know what we found in going to other areas? Let's say you go to an area where the average purchase price is $200,000. It is just as hard for those people to save $20,000 as it is for you to save $50,000. It really is. People tend to think that in their area everything's different, but it's not true. It's just all relative. So there's an interesting article. Here's one that came out, and this is, let's see, when is this? This is, today's paper. Couldn't find anything more current, sorry. Jobs report, Intel forecast sends stocks lower. Stocks are down again. The stock market is very interesting. We like to beat up the stock market because it's so easy. I'm fortunate, personally, I do have a small fortune in the stock market because I used to have a big fortune in the stock market. But we're in the walking wounded here in Silicon Valley, right? But interesting, this is an article that came out about a month and a half ago. Check this out. Insider selling of stocks rings warning bells. By one measure, Silicon Valley insiders, those are the executives and directors who run local companies, sold $170 worth of their company's stock for every dollar that they bought between June 1st and September 30th this year. So between June 1st and September 30th, the people that run the Bay Area companies, and should they have a little idea and insight into where it's headed? They sold $170 of their stock for every dollar they bought. Does that scare anybody? It's like, come on, you guys, the market's going up. Yeah, it's going up. Yeah, it's going up. Quick, sell, right? And who gets stuck? We all get stuck. And here's the scary part. It's happened over and over and over again. And we still like little sheep to be slaughtered. Walk up and invest, right? I mean, I bought Cisco when it was 65, and it'll come back in 300 years, right? So people I love this one. I'm waiting for my stock to come back up. That's a good one, right? I mean, maybe some stocks are coming back up, but there's a lot in the news about that. I mean, this is another one. This was in the paper last week, and it said that the two top executives of the company, one of them sold stock worth $2.57 million, and another one sold stock worth $1 million. Well, this guy took stock options, bought almost 200,000 shares of his company's stock, and sold it instantly. Guess how much he still owns of his own company stock? 1,000 shares. He kept 1,000 shares. He just sold 200,000. What does that tell you about what these people think? Here's a great one, Smart Money Magazine, if you saw this article. There's Warren Buffett. What's Warren Buffett doing? Nothing. Putting his money in cash, right? Warren Buffett, best investor there's ever been, right? Well, the article in here talks about home prices. What's next for home prices? The dreading housing bubble hasn't burst. Not yet, anyway. The housing bubble's on the way, isn't it? Who's scared of the bubble? I got a clue for you. There is no bubble. There is no bubble. I'm going to prove that in just a minute. Anyway, what this finally says in this article is, relax though, because all of the indicators, you can exhale. I can't, but it says you can exhale now. While home prices are no longer headed towards the stratosphere, they're not likely to come crashing down anytime soon. Interest rates are still low, economy is still showing signs of life, and tight housing inventories are still the rule in most marketplaces. Right here in your marketplace, what's housing like? What's the housing market like right now? It's going up, right? It's going up. Houses are selling. We've seen multiple offers again. Multiple offers on property. Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty good. We've got, stuff that's going on. It's not a crazy seller's market where you can put your house in the market and sell in 10 minutes, which, by the way, is never a good market, even when you're a seller. You think it is, right? Anybody sold a house in one of those markets? Remember those? You put they're putting the sign out, and then they have to go back to the truck and put the sold sign on. Right, because that's how fast, multiple offers and all that. The problem with that is even though you might get a higher price for your house, in about a year or 2 years, you'll have a new title and it will be defendant. Because you sold a house and they waived their inspection contingencies and they waived their appraisal, all the stuff they do in a hot market, and that comes back to haunt a lot of people, so be careful about that. Well, here's another topic in the news. A lot of little stealing. We've heard about the mutual fund scandal, right? SEC says mutual fund scandal is growing. We've got mutual fund firms have reason to fear injection. It's okay. You don't need to see all these. There's just dozens of them. Mutual fund mess casts cloud over investors. Here's one. Morgan to pay $50 million in their fund scandal. And prior to the mutual fund scandal, what was the scandal that we had? Remember the accounting scandal? Remember that one? Right? People were worried about irregularities in accounting. Do Americans have the confidence in companies they once did? No, they don't. And nobody cares more about your future than who? Than you. And so what in the past we've been able to do is just hand over our retirement accounts and our investment portfolios to somebody. We can't do that anymore. We need to be in charge. What else is going on? Well, let's talk about real estate. I always like to talk about that. The Bay Area office market is suffering. It's Santa Clara County, likely the worst in the nation. Here's that's office space, right? You know, you see a lot of these see-through buildings and stuff, right? You're driving down 101 and there's that Excited Home building. What a great building that is, right? It just happens to be empty. I'm thinking, that could be a really nice building. It's beautiful. There's lots of square footage in it, right? I'd like to buy that building, as long as I had a tenant for it. Bay Area apartment rents flat in third quarter. How many of you own rental property right here in the Bay Area? How are your rents? Sorry to bring it up. We've had to lower our rents a little bit. We've had to make some rent concessions a little bit. We have a little more vacancy than we used to. But guess what? Time heals all wounds. Is it always going to be like that? No, it's going to get better. You watch, I promise. But can you wait is the question. Here's another one about real estate. I love this one. Foreclosure activity rises in the valley. Foreclosure activity. This is so newspapery. Remember, there was an article here in the Bay Area about a year ago, and it said that foreclosures soar 121%. And people were like, wow, that must mean every single house is being foreclosed upon. Then you read down all the way through the article, and it said that from one quarter to the next, there were 8 more foreclosures in the whole county. So the media blows everything out of proportion. In fact, the media is always reporting the negative side. Most newspapers run 6 negative stories about real estate for every 1 positive story, even in great markets. But, you know, you have to be careful what's in the paper. This is an article I know is important because it came out 3 days ago, and everybody in my office put it on my desk. I got 3 copies of these. Santa Clara County poised for multi-housing family home boom. So there's the one positive, right? All these negative articles. Finally, one comes out that's positive, and it says, yes, we're going to have room for multifamily housing, which could be good, right? And maybe not. But generally what they're talking about there, when they talk about multifamily housing, are those big apartment complexes that you see going in. Can you and I own those big apartment complexes? Not really. I mean, I haven't checked your financial statement on the way in, but personally, I have a little trouble with 1,000 units at once, right? So one of my goals, I want to have 1,000 units in my personal repertoire, but I'm a ways away. Got a lot of goals, got a lot of funny goals. Here's one of my goals. Ron and I have a goal to personally be in debt. $100 million by the end of next year. Who thinks we're out of our mind? Well, you haven't learned enough yet if you think so, because debt is what controls real estate. The more real estate you control, when it goes up in value, the more money you make, and you're going to be convinced of that by the time we're done today. And then finally, I'll end this one just as an article for you landlords. $6 million awarded against a landlord because a 9-year-old boy was badly burned when he was trying to warm his hands over the stove because the heater didn't work. Should the landlord have some responsibility in that case? Yeah, probably so. Should the landlord have $6 million worth of responsibility in that case? I don't know, folks. It's tough to be a landlord. It is. It's hard today, and it's getting harder. I'm not trying to discourage you from it. In fact, quite the opposite. I just think that if you're going to be a landlord, what you want to be is an educated landlord, and you want to understand the game you're in and play by the rules. At Landlord Bootcamp, we teach people how to be ethical landlords, because you know what? It's easier. It's easier to do the right thing most of the time and to run property like it's supposed to. Much easier way to go. All right, so I like to see what's going on in the news. Especially like this one. Lots of stuff, right? We always want to be going and understanding what's in the news, but understand that newspapers have an agenda. When you see a headline that says foreclosures up 121%, why did they put that headline in the newspaper? Because they want to sell newspapers. Do they care about how many houses are foreclosing on? They don't care. They want to sell you newspapers. When you're walking by and you see the stands, you go, Oh, I want to buy that one. That's what their job is, and they do that through alarming you. You need to be careful about what you read. Now, you can believe everything you hear on the radio. That's all good. So you got to be careful about what you read. All right, so let's talk about real estate. How does it compare to other things? We looked at all the other things that you could invest your money in, stocks and mutual funds and bonds, and we've kind of spent a little time on that. But you want to look at a couple of instances. Robert Kiyosaki in Rich Dad Poor Dad. Who's read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Great. Look at all the hands. I love that. It's like 80% of the people have read that book. Do you think 80% of people in America have read that book? Or do you think the kind of people who read that book and have their thinking changed come to seminars like this? Pretty cool. So in that book, he says that you should invest, maybe it's not in that book, but Robert Kiyosaki does say that you should invest in things that, number one, banks will give you the money to buy, and number two, you can get insurance on. If a bank will give you the majority of the money, 80% of the money, to buy the asset, and you can get insurance on it, then it makes good investment. So ask yourself, how many of these things will the bank give you money to invest, the lion's share of the money, in fact, and let you have insurance on? Unless it's already insurance. So why is real estate best? Let's talk about the reasons I think real estate is best. There's a whole bunch of them. Today you'll learn about the 4 ways that we make money in residential income property. But the first one, and the big one, is appreciation. Here's what happens to real estate. Properties go up over time. They become more and more and more and more valuable. And we've seen this happen. Now, how much do you think, on average, in the United States, how much do properties increase in value every year? 6%? 5%? 5 here. For years, I've been saying, 5 or 6%. Well, that was good enough for me, but it wasn't good enough for Russell Spreadsheet Gray. So Russ went back and researched this and figured out that from 1968 to 2000, the average increase in value was 6.19%. So 6.19% is the average. Well, that seems about right. But wait a minute. What does the stock market increase on average? Don't count the last couple of years, but on average, what does it go up? 11 to 12 to 15%. It goes up more. Well, Dolph DeRusso in his book Real Estate Riches said you can't really compare, because when we're talking about the stock market's performance in the last 60 years or whatever, they talk about like the S&P 500, which are the top 500 stocks. If we gauged real estate by the top 500 properties, how's it going to do? Much better than the stock market, but we don't get to do that. We get to do it as a whole. And as a whole, real estate goes up 6%. So isn't stocks a better investment? Well, no, because we got a lot of cool stuff that goes on. In fact, one of the great things about appreciation is that as time goes on, you have more and more and more of the property that belongs to you. That's what we call equity. And the truth, and one of the great truths in America, one of the best things you're going to hear today is that equity happens. Equity happens. As time goes on, that is what happens. You get more and more equity in your property. The only question is, will it happen to you? If you don't have any property, it won't. What is equity? Equity is the difference between the market value of a property and the loans against it. So I bought the property for $250,000. I put down $50,000, and I get a loan for $200,000. If the property goes up to $300,000, I have another $50,000 in equity. If it goes up to $350,000, now I have $100,000 in equity. $100,000 in equity. Now, your initial equity deposit or down payment, that counts as equity too, but you've already put that money in. But that's what equity is. And so equity will continue to happen, and I think you'll be convinced of that after today. So appreciation is one of the great things about real estate. It goes up. Does all houses appreciate? No! I was driving through Topeka, Kansas one night, and there's a billboard on the side of the road that says, "Are you tired of looking at 3-bedroom homes in the 50s? I thought, yeah, exhausted of that. They had as a new housing development, and they started at like $47.9 was their starting price. And I actually went to, not this development, but another development where the house is real nice in Topeka, and it was in the April, May kind of time frame. A little hot, but it was nice, Anyone from Topeka? I beat up Topeka a lot, only because it's fun too, and it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. And I go to this housing development. It's a nice house. It's like 2,500 square feet, and it's $117,000 or something. I mean, I'm just going, wow, it's a beautiful, full basement. And then the guy starts talking about how the homeowners association's dues include snow removal. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, like snow removal. One other time I was back there in the Midwest, I had pulled over to the side of the car, the side of the road, and got a soda with ice in it, left it in my car overnight, came back, and there was still ice in the soda. It never got above freezing. This is why I don't live there. Problem with owning a house in Topeka is you have to go there, and who wants to? But in Topeka, if I would have bought that house for $47.9, today it's probably worth $51.2. 10 years later. So it doesn't go up in value. See, remember we talked about average? The average is 6%. About 2 years ago, we started investing in a marketplace here in California called Sacramento. We put ourselves in first and a few key clients. Ron and I went in. Paul, who started today, our sound guy, and he bought some property there. How about a hand for the sound crew and the video crew today? talented. Anyway, Paul's done sound for our seminars for a couple of times. We did this seminar, and he came and said, well, what about me? Like, could I put some property in? So Paul, who you saw standing on stage in the warm-up this morning, how many of you would rent to Paul? Not too many hands. Sorry, Paul. The question is, how many of you would Paul rent to? See, Paul owns property. We talked about earlier, should you own an investment property or a house you live in? Paul is a renter here, and he owns property in Sacramento. That property's gone up in value quite a bit. If I have time today, I'll tell you that story because it's a fun story. But property goes up in value, and Sacramento went up really well. We put clients in, many of the people in the room actually are either from Sacramento or bought property there, and those are the ones that you can tell are smiling, because last year, Sacramento was the #1 appreciating marketplace in America. Is it good to invest in the #1 appreciating marketplace in America? Yeah, are you always going to be able to do that? There is a question for you. Do you think that we went up and put a bunch of people in the Sacramento property and then by some coincidence it went up in value? Or do you think that my company spends its time researching areas that are going to go up way above average? I don't know. You decide. See, here's the thing about average. Average means half the markets are better and half the markets are below. Do you know that more than half? Let's do this. Here's averages for you. Right now, half the people in this room are below average intelligence. For this room, right? Half of you are below average intelligence for the room. Is that true? That's a statistic for you. Look at averages, and they're only averages. Appreciation, though, the way that we do better than the 6% is we do a little research and a little study and a little due diligence, and we find markets that we expect will have better appreciation. Not necessarily the best in the nation, but pretty well. All right, what else? Leverage. This is a great positive benefit about real estate. In real estate, you don't have to have 100% of the money to get the asset. You control the asset for a portion of the value. So rather than have to have all of the money to buy a property, I can have just a part, a down payment, say 20%. What about 20% down on a $250,000 property? $50,000 controls the asset. Now, if the $250,000 property goes up to $300,000, how much of the $50,000 in gain does the bank get?